Hi, I'm Merv King from the Algonquin First Nation and a proud steelworker. I'd like to acknowledge that Toronto and York Region are covered by Treaty 13. I encourage all of you to reflect on the land that you're standing on, who the traditional keepers of this land are, and what the treaty relationship is between all the people living on it. Toronto and York Region are located on the treaty lands of the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. This territory is within and protected by the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wyandot nations to peaceably share and care for the abundant resources around the Great Lakes. Today, Toronto is home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we ask that you respect the lands, the waters, and the people who have come from the four directions to live and work within the territory. Thank you, and miigwech.
Welcome to the Toronto and York Region Labour Council's Day of Mourning ceremonies. You know, the labour movement in Canada has been celebrating this day for 36 years now. It's when we honour those who've been killed or injured at work or suffer from workplace disease. And for 150 years, health and safety has been a focus of our labour movement in this place. Our years of struggle for safety have provided a guide to what should be happening now. Workers need to be empowered, and employers must invest in safety in workplaces. Everybody on the front line should be vaccinated. Public health programs need to be invested in, and most importantly, everybody should have paid sick days off when they need it.
Today we mourn for those who were injured on the job. We mourn for our brothers and sisters who died at their workplaces. Words cannot express the depth of our emotion and sadness as we remember the victims of these tragedies that leave an empty chair at the family table. A brother, sister, husband, wife, son, or daughter who will never return home to their family. Children who will never again feel the warm and loving embrace of their parent. And tragedies that cause pain, injuries, and disabilities that forever impact the lives of workers and their loved ones. They were the hard-working laborers and workers who built our communities and our province. They will never be forgotten by their families, their communities, and by us at LiUNA, Local 183. Our thoughts and everlasting prayers will remain with you always.
Hello, my name is Carolina Jimenez. I'm a registered nurse and a public health professional. I'm also the coordinator of the Decent Work and Health Network. The Decent Work and Health Network is a group of health workers and community advocates who stand in solidarity with workers. If anything has been made more clear to us during this pandemic is that workplaces, in particular precarious workplaces, are key drivers of COVID-19 infection. We've been advocating for policies like legislated and permanent paid sick days since well before the pandemic, but it's been made to us so clearly that we need urgent government action. We need workers to be safe on the job. This is crucial to the well-being of our communities and our ability for hospitals to function during this time. So we stand here mourning the thousands of deaths, the thousands of cases of disability and injury that have occurred because of provincial government negligence. We stand here with a reaffirmed commitment to hold the government accountable and to make sure that they legislate at least 10 permanent paid sick days for all workers through employment standards. We need to make sure that they're employer paid. Large employers like Amazon and Walmart can surely afford to pay and protect workers on the job. They simply choose not to. For many, in particular Black, racialized, women workers, Indigenous workers, disabled workers, this is truly a matter of life and death.
Hi everyone, I'm Lily Cheng from CUPE Local 79, representing over 22,000 workers at the City of Toronto, Bridgepoint Health, and Toronto Community Housing. I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you about our members, who in this past year mobilized and were part of the largest pandemic response the City of Toronto has ever seen. Starting with our members in Toronto Public Health, who under Doug Ford's government faced devastating cuts just weeks before COVID-19 had its grip on the world. It was Toronto Public Health workers who diligently traced the virus's spread, calling those who might have come in contact and asking them to isolate. Their efforts helped turn the numbers around in the first wave, and their work has not stopped since. As the province dropped its ball on the pandemic response and case numbers soared through the second and third waves, public health workers were pushed to their limit. They continue to soldier on to this day at the pandemic's height, while also staffing the city's largest immunization drive ever. This pandemic has taught us how valuable our public health units are. It has also shown us how important public services are in a crisis. As COVID-19 hit long-term care homes, our members were sent to help for-profit homes where COVID-19 was killing seniors in staggering numbers. Our public municipal homes, on the other hand, fared much better. As child care centers closed, it was our public municipal centers that reopened to offer emergency child care to frontline essential staff. As outbreaks were announced in shelters, our members in Parks and Recreation were redeployed to help shelter and housing staff open emergency shelters in hotels and other respite centers. Recreation workers are also redeployed to public health in order to help with contact tracing. I can't imagine what Toronto's ability to respond to the pandemic would have been like without our municipal workers. And finally, as a union that represents a diverse membership in one of the most diverse cities of the world, I want to talk about white supremacy and its effect on our racialized membership. The high-profile killings of African Americans by police last year, along with the increase of attacks on Asian communities, have weighed heavily on the mental health of our Black and Asian workforce. While I'm very proud of the anti-racism work of our labor movement, everyone needs to step up individually. I urge you all, especially our white brothers and sisters, to step up for our fellow BIPOC co-workers, especially if you see an injustice being done. We are so much stronger when we stand together. That's what solidarity is all about. Thank you.
Every year for 1 minute on April 28th at 11 a.m., workers from over 80 countries stop and observe the day of mourning. Workplace safety is and should be our primary focus. April 28th also serves as a reminder to all workers and employers of the ill, the injured, and those that have lost their lives. It also gives us an opportunity to renew our commitment to improve health and safety in the workplace everywhere. Our contractors and the IBW are dedicated to improving workplace safety, injury prevention on all work sites. COVID-19 has changed every aspect of our lives, including the inability for us to gather and to honor the lives of friends and co-workers who have been affected by injury or disease. Sadly, our need for isolation and distancing has also prevented us from attending funerals and directly supporting the families that are affected. The day of mourning reminds us all that workers continue to suffer every day in the workplace. The Canadian flag on Parliament Hill will fly at half-mast, and workers will light candles, don ribbons, wear stickers, and wear black armbands, and observe a moment. Even though we are not permitted to gather publicly, remember to take a moment on April 28th at 11 a.m. and observe that moment of silence. Let's stand in solidarity and remember that one injury is one injury too many. Stay safe, be well.
You know, every year we come together on April the 28th for a National Day of Mourning. Every year it's a difficult year because far too many workers, far too many of our brothers and sisters lost their lives on the job. But this year's a year almost unlike any other because it's been so many of our workers, our frontline essential workers, who have not only lost their lives on the job, but they've lost their lives in the service of keeping us all healthy and safe during this pandemic. The National Day of Mourning is a somber day every year. This year especially, not only is it a somber day, but it should be a wake-up call to all levels of government, all industry, for everybody, that we need to do a better job of protecting those frontline essential workers, that we need to reevaluate who makes our society function, who goes to work each and every day to take care of us. So on this National Day of Mourning, we grieve, we remember, and we also demand better. Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Ricardo Mckenzie, and I'm the Director of Long-Term Care at SCIU Healthcare. SCIU is a union that represents more than 60,000 healthcare workers across Ontario. Today, April 28th, is National Day of Mourning. This is a day to honor those workers in Canada who have been killed, injured, or disabled on the job, or who have suffered from occupational diseases. It is also a day to commit to protecting workers and preventing further tragedies. This is more important than ever because every day, workers are putting their lives at risk by being exposed to COVID-19. Thousands have contracted the virus, and sadly, too many have lost their lives. SCIU Healthcare is mourning the loss of some of our own members who have died from COVID. If employers and government have taken the right steps and have listened to SCIU to protect workers, these illnesses and deaths could have been prevented. SCIU Healthcare is fully committed to doing whatever it takes to keep workers safe. We are fighting for access to adequate PPEs. We are fighting to make sure that our members are protected in their workplace, that the shortage of staff that is a crisis right now in long-term care homes is addressed, and that the government and employers invest into hiring more staff and providing better quality care for residents. We are advocating for paid sick days. We are asking for the pandemic pay of $4 to be permanent and to be paid to all healthcare workers. We're not going to stop. We will continue to demand better for workers across the province of Ontario. SCIU Healthcare wants to thank all the workers in Ontario. Thank you for your bravery, your resilience, your continued hard work during these challenging times.
My name is Amanda Young-Colucci, and I'm Ward 6 Councillor at City of Markham. As we gather at National Day of Mourning, remembering all those who lost their precious lives at work, we must advocate for workplace safety continuously, as it is not just a one-day event. It's been over a year since the onset of the COVID-19 worldwide pandemic. WSIB has logged 46 deaths that can be linked directly to workplace exposure of the virus in Ontario since the pandemic began. My brother, who worked at Canada Post, contracted COVID-19 during an outbreak. He was also one of more than a dozen workers who died due to COVID-19 exposure at Ontario workplaces this year. Essential workers need to be prioritized for vaccination. They must be provided with proper PPE and need to be protected. What happened to my brother shouldn't happen to anyone else. Every business, every supervisor, and every worker out there has to do more today than at any point during this pandemic to keep people safe and to be vigilant. On National Day of Mourning, it serves as a reminder that we must continue to advocate for workplace safety. These aren't just numbers. Every recorded death is someone's family member, friend, parent, or child, someone who needed to be protected.
Today, all across Ontario and Canada, we mark with pain and sorrow the National Day of Mourning. It is in the spirit of solidarity that I stand with our brothers and sisters who have lost friends, family, colleagues, and loved ones to preventable deaths in the workplace. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed many inequities in our communities. Throughout this crisis, those who put the most on the line, risking their lives, like our healthcare workers, public health staff, the first responders who keep our communities safe, staff in pharmacies, grocery stores, our local businesses that have kept our communities going. Today, let's reflect on every single person who has been infected at work and mourn the loss of every worker who has died throughout this pandemic. We also continue to advocate for expanding WSIB coverage to serve those who are currently impacted by the virus and those who will be dealing with the traumas of loss and disruption for years to come. As we reflect on the losses in our communities, we must keep fighting for what is right. This means continuing to fight for paid sick days for all workers, fighting for ongoing supports to ensure an equitable recovery and a better tomorrow for everyone. It is also necessary that on this day of mourning, we recognize how essential workers can be given a better workplace, a safer workplace, through effective and equitable distribution of vaccines to the hardest hit regions, like here in Scarborough. No matter how immense the challenges we face are, we know that every infection, every injury, and every death in these workplaces were preventable, and we can do better. Today is the National Day of Mourning. We will remember those we have lost, but in their memory, we must never stop fighting for what is right.
My name is Philomena Ferraro, and I am an executive board member of the Toronto and York Region Labour Council. As an outgoing board member, I am very humbled to be speaking on the Day of Mourning during a global pandemic that has significantly affected the education sector. We are in a public health crisis. Despite warnings from unions and experts, the Ford government failed Ontarians by their lack of planning during this third wave, which many experts believe was preventable. In fact, since September, the government has refused to adequately fund our classrooms, and they continue to do so despite increasing infection rates. The government failed at making schools safer by not reducing class sizes, improve ventilation systems, and provide adequate PPEs. As a result, teachers, education workers, custodians, secretaries, all workers in education are at risk every day. The vaccine rollout for school workers is confusing at best. Most workers are vaccinated due to their age and postal code, not because this government prioritizes education workers. Our schools are not immune to the spread of COVID-19 and highly contagious variants that have posed a significant threat to all ages. Providing paid sick leave is crucial to reducing and eliminating the infection rates in our school communities. We want our schools open, but only if buildings are safe. Without the necessary protections, we are all at risk. I want to thank education workers who work under these unsafe conditions and do their very best to make our schools as safe as possible for students, our children. I want to acknowledge workers who sustained physical and psychological injuries this past year. And to our CUPE sister, an education worker in Toronto, who died this past November from COVID-19. You will always be remembered. We honor you all today. Thank you.
My name is Abdi Hagi Yusuf. I'm Secretary Treasurer for Toronto Local Canadian Union of Postal Workers. I'm also the Secretary of Toronto and York Labour Council. Sisters and brothers, comrades, April 28 marks the National Day of Mourning. Unfortunately, Canadian Union of Postal Workers Toronto Local was one of the hardest hit. We mourn the death of our fallen members during these pandemic times. We mourn the death of Brother Godfrey Young, and we remember and mourn the loss of others and honor their legacies. We also remember today, April 28th, to the workers who are working at the gig economy that's expanding. We must also remember the warehouse workers who are frontline workers and the lack of the health and safety regulations that may protect them or will protect them from the dangers of the workplace. April 28 is only one day, but we should remember all year round the workers who are working and building the economy of any country, all the countries globally. We must remember the countries in the third world and the workers that don't have health and safety regulations like we do here. Sisters and brothers, it's a task that we should all commit to fight and protect all workers wherever they are. Thank you for your time.
Greetings, and thank you for having me speak here today at your National Day of Mourning ceremony. People gather every year on April 28th to remember workers who have been killed, made sick, or injured at work, and to continue the fight to protect all workers with safe and healthy workplaces. As we continue to struggle with COVID-19 in all areas of our lives, I can't help but think of the human cost of this pandemic. I went with my dad to deliver a load of logs to our mill in the late 60s, and the smell from the mill was strong that day. My dad told me it was the smell of prosperity, noting we would never know the true cost of it. We can say the same about COVID-19 today. As with other occupational diseases, COVID-19 doesn't blatantly announce its presence, it just strikes. Trends over the past decade show a definite shift in WSIB's focus. WSIB's wealth has more than doubled to $35.7 billion in 2017. Employers' premiums have been reduced by 47%. Injured workers haven't fared so well. Our benefits were cut by more than 50%. Roughly 20,000 workers every year suffer a permanent injury, but the long-term effects of COVID-19 are still to be determined for workers who have been exposed to the virus. Elizabeth Whitmer reports that the WSIB is financially in good shape in an interview on February 5th of this year. The unfunded liability is gone and we have a surplus, she says. I don't see that at all. COVID lost time claims increased roughly 43% from February 5th to March 31st in 2021 to 21,133. How will the compensation system be able to support all our workers, as they should? Today, on behalf of injured workers in Ontario, I am calling on Premier Ford and MPPs to prioritize the health and safety of all workers. There is but one moment between being a worker and an injured, diseased, or dead worker. Ontario is at a critical point if it is not too late. You must tell the WSIB that it is their responsibility, not the responsibility of every taxpayer in Ontario, to support workers and their families who have been killed, injured, or made sick in the workplace. You must recognize the work that your MPPs are doing to protect workers in Ontario, and you must pass these acts. You must pass paid sick leave for all workers so that we can put a stop to the growing cases of COVID and save our workers and our healthcare system. You must make every person in Ontario your number one priority, and all your decisions should reflect this. Thank you for your time. Stay safe.
Catherine Grzeszczuk, President of CUPE Local 905. Local 905 represents municipal and library workers across York Region and New Tecumseh. April 28th is Day of Mourning for workers that have been killed and injured. April 28th, we mourn for the dead and fight for the living. The last year has brought us an unprecedented amount of mourning. We know that workers have gotten sick from COVID at work and have also brought it home and made their family members ill as well. After 1 year of this pandemic, I challenge all of you to think about how it is that we're going to fight for the living. As well, talk to your coworkers about the desperately needed measures that we need to put in place to end the spread of this virus. Immediately, we need 10 paid sick days for all workers in this province that are paid for by employers. We know that the virus is spreading through workplaces because workers who don't have any paid sick days are coming into work symptomatic with COVID. We need vaccinations prioritized for all workers that are continuing to come into work during this time. We also need workplace safety measures that reflect the fact that this virus is airborne. We've known for a year now that the virus is spreading indoors through the air, and workplace safety measures still don't reflect that reality. And finally, we demand an end to enhanced police powers. For the last year, Black, Indigenous, and racialized workers have been telling us that racism is killing them. Criminalizing and policing the most vulnerable members of our communities is not going to end the spread of this pandemic. On April 28th, please take 10 minutes out of your workday to talk to your coworkers about how we can together fight for the living.
My name is Rolly Bernardini, President of Liuna Local 506. First, I would like to give our heartfelt thanks to all of the frontline workers who sacrificed their safety in order to curb the spread. It is with a heavy heart that I inform you that Local 506 lost a brother over the past year, Brother Paul Moro, who was crushed by a precast panel. Workers like Paul have built this great city and the communities we live in. Now these families are left without a father, a son, a husband, a brother, a daughter. The effects of these individuals' deaths have a tremendous impact on our spirits, our mind, and our emotions. Where many of us see beautiful skyscrapers and outstanding architecture while driving through the streets of Toronto, to these families and to those who have witnessed a death in the workplace, they see tombstones. So we must rise up. The trade union movement founded by our forefathers was built by fighting for better health and safety conditions. Learn to use your rights under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Don't be afraid to stand up or speak up when you have questions. Union officials and union representatives, I urge you, when visiting the work sites, instead of just fighting for scraps of work or shaking hands, fight for safe working conditions. Look at the lunch trailers to see if they're clean and sanitary. That alone can change the mindset on a job site. Be an integral role of the Joint Health and Safety Committees and ensure they're functioning properly. Focus on and act on matters relating to safety. Remember that our forefathers fought for, and an integral part of our responsibilities is to ensure our signatory employers are following the collective agreement and the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Government officials, each of you play an important role in mandating change. Instead of waiting for a coroner's report to pass legislation, be proactive. Introduce legislation mandating high schools to implement training, teaching our youth their fundamental rights before they enter the workplace. Implement legislation that will ultimately save lives, like paid sick leave. And as far as you, brothers and sisters, be active, get active. When you see unsafe working conditions, speak up, stand up. Individual actions make a real difference. Let's watch out for our brothers and sisters. Demand your rights from your employer. Talk to your union. Address safety concerns. Have each other's backs on and off the job. Let's all commit to taking action today so that we don't live with regrets. Thank you.
The last 14 months of this pandemic has revealed some ugly truths. That many employers believe workers are essential, but expendable. And that government reports don't stop workers from dying and getting sick if their recommendations are ignored. I'm Tom Parkin, Managing Director of the Workers' Health and Safety Center. Greetings from our board and Executive Director Dave Killam on this day of mourning. For 150 years, the Toronto and York Region Labour Council has been working to improve the lives of workers in the city, and we're proud to work with you. Together, we've advocated and researched. We've trained tens of thousands of workers. Together, we've also seen the tragedies. We've participated in the inquiries, read the reports and recommendations, heard the promises. And together, we've also seen many of those promises fade into overdue action. We've seen, because of overdue action, tragedy strike again. It's frustrating, saddening, and angering. More than 10 years ago, after SARS, the Campbell Report called for the precautionary principle, not waiting until the sick start showing up in the ICUs to take preventative action. It called for better workplace ventilation and to ensure stockpiles of PPE. It said workers' voices on joint health and safety committees should never be sidelined, especially in a pandemic. But those recommendations were ignored. In 2011, the Dean Report called for mandatory training before any worker steps on a construction site, for provincial standards for legally required training like WHMIS, for working at heights training in all sectors, that health and safety representatives in smaller workplaces be trained to do their role. And a decade later, those recommendations are action overdue. Last year, the Jimenez report called for an independent scientific review panel to root out research bias and take down barriers that deny workers their due compensation. It recommended a stronger capacity to act, investigate, and prevent workplace cancer clusters. Those recommendations are also overdue. And so recently, we've had expert recommendations to protect us from this pandemic, more recommendations that were ignored. We need our leaders to do their jobs so workers don't die doing theirs. Every day across this incredible province, workers do their jobs, building great cities and neighborhoods, running hospitals and schools, mining and foresting in our forests, putting electricity into our power grid, picking the food and getting it on the shelves, manufacturing, warehousing, and trucking, and helping each other with everything from haircuts to workouts. People are not expendable, so they deserve a lot better than overdue action and predictable tragedy. On this pandemic day of mourning, let's remember those overdue recommendations. See the workers whose deaths led to them, and see the workers whose deaths could have been prevented by them. Thank you to the Toronto and York Region Labour Council for your solidarity with the Workers' Health and Safety Centre over this past very difficult year. And thank you on your 150th year of fighting to protect the lives of workers.
My name is Andrea Badminton, Vice President of the Toronto and York Region Labour Council. Thank you to our speakers and everyone who has joined us today. As the COVID pandemic continues into its second year, we must demand measures needed to protect lives. And we demand respect for every person at work, in their community, and in society. Please join us together for a moment of silence. Thank you. Our years of struggle for safety has shown what must be done. Make every workplace safe, vaccination for all frontline workers, and paid sick days for all. As we go our separate ways, please stay safe. Let us commit to the health and safety pledge of those who came before us. We will mourn for the dead and fight for the living. Thank you.